Okay, I think we're live. I'm not sure, so I will wait a few seconds. Just trying to pull up the screen here. Okay, so good afternoon. This is Steve Mazzacane from the Steve Mazzacane podcast. It is 4:02 on Tuesday. I have something of about a 15-second delay. So your comments, my responses, if there are comments, may not come immediately. I apologize for that, but I also apologize for not being on yesterday. I know every time that I have to cancel the podcast, we get a bunch of emails. You know, where are you? How come you're not on? I guess for some people, we're like the reminder that it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So those that are new or regulars, Monday through Thursday at 4 o'clock, we do this podcast, and it's just talking about local issues, state issues, some national things, questions that come in, issues that come up, and we try to take a very moderate look at things. Doesn't mean we always take the middle. I may be left or right on certain issues, but we look at issues on their merits and not just pick a side. And hopefully that's a kind of a new way to look at things. We live in a world that is so partisan and that everything, it has to be either left or right. I was on Chris Murphy's Facebook page the other day, and I posted a comment questioning something he said, and about 30 people automatically jump on you like you're a Trump fan. Anybody who knows me knows I'm no Trump fan. I did not vote for Trump. But it doesn't give us the right to rephrase what he said or to paint everybody in light, either left or right. There's many people in that middle, and my belief is that most people are in that middle. Most people are fairly reasonable. Today's podcast is sponsored by Jiffy Lube. We will have a sponsor on every podcast. Some businesses we work with, some we may not. But Jiffy Lube in Brantford, the reason they're a sponsor is that I use them on a regular basis, and they're very, very good. People think they just do oil changes. I've had my brakes done there. I've had new tires there. I've had my alternator done there, and they're pretty amazing. And Chris Hood is the owner, a Brantford guy. If you have an issue with your car, go to Jiffy Lube. Okay, so let's talk about some issues today. And the question that we've gotten many, many times on the stimulus package, and what are we getting? We got word yesterday that up to 6 weeks of the $300 will be paid to Connecticut residents. That if you made over $100 in unemployment, you will get that extra $300 over a couple different payments over the next couple weeks. That's a good thing. For the life of me, though, and I've said this before, I cannot figure out what the national Republicans are doing. If I was a national Republican, if I was Trump and I was looking to get reelection, and the Democrats put up a $3.2, $3.3 trillion package, I would have come back with a $4 trillion package. I would have done everything I can to top the Democrats. Instead, the Republicans did the opposite, where they waited months to come up with a competing plan, were way too late, got a gap in those benefits, refused to come up over $1 trillion in benefits. Then they just last week tried to do a $500 billion one. They tried to make Trump look like the hero in passing this tentative stimulus package that will pay the $300, but it ends. And so you're going to have a couple things happening. You're seeing businesses already start to struggle, especially restaurants, as outside seating no longer becomes a thing. As it gets colder, outside seating will drift off. Those restaurants are going to struggle significantly. The people who had that $600 and many were $300 are not going to have that to spend anymore. And there's no sign of a vaccine in sight. So things are going to get worse. The economy is going to turn. I'm waiting for the market to drop. It has to happen at some point. And the question I have is Trump just kind of waiting to get closer to the election and then pass a huge stimulus package? I don't know. But right now, I cannot make heads or tails over what they're trying to do. And the problem they're going to have, from a strategy standpoint, is if you get a month and a half before the election, and there's no stimulus package, Biden can rightfully run on your chances of getting a stimulus are much higher if he wins. And especially if the Democrats take the Senate as well. So for the life of me, I cannot figure out what the Republican plan is nationally. It doesn't make any sense. I can't figure out why they're not passing something, why they're not coming to the table. Pelosi said today they're not leaving Washington until they have a plan. Right now, the Democrats have the high road on the stimulus package. He's agreed to come down to $2.2 trillion, I believe. Republicans are going the other direction. I don't know how this helps them politically. I don't know what kind of votes they expect to get by not passing a stimulus package. So if you're getting that $300, congratulations. But there are many people who are struggling. The economy, especially for small businesses, is going to start slowing down as we get into winter. And I can't make heads or tails out of what the hell the National Republicans are doing. It doesn't make any sense to me. So that said, let's talk about, those are the emails we get a lot. What's happening with the stimulus? I don't have any inside information. I can't make heads or tails of what they're doing. I've made some phone calls to people that I know. Is there any logic here? No one has an answer. So let's talk about what we talked about a week and a half ago in this mess in Madison. And in Madison, we'll just give you a little bit of a primer of what had happened. On Joe LaPorta is a Republican from Madison who is running against Christine Cohen, the incumbent state senator. Now, I'll start off by saying this. Democrats are going to win these seats. Like, I don't see Christine Cohen in any actual danger of losing her seat. Sean Scanlon's running unopposed. And it's simple. They won 2 years ago without the presidential race, and the vast majority of presidential voters who just come out for the presidential race are Democratic voters. They're going to have the largest percentage. So I can't see Robin Comey or Christine Cohen or obviously Sean Scanlon's not going to lose, but I can't see them. Noreen Koch-Ruda might be in trouble, right? Because you're going to get a big push of Democratic voters. That was very close 2 years ago without it being a presidential race. In any event, he's running. On his Facebook page, he posted that he was endorsed by the NRA. And there's a picture of him with a rifle shooting at a target. All right, whatever. And Eileen Banish, who is the vice chair of the Republican Town Committee in Madison and the chairman of the Chamber of Commerce, jokes that, you know what, let me pull up the exact wording on this joke. Here's the joke. You should put a bagel on the bullseye. Toss bagels in the air like skeet. Now, to 99.9% of Americans, haha, that's kind of funny, stupid, whatever, let's move on with our lives. That's how the vast majority of reasonable, intelligent, logical people would have responded. But in Madison, we have I'm just looking at some of these questions. I'll answer those questions a little bit. In Madison, there is an issue with Tom and Eileen Banish. Tom is a former first selectman. And this woman by the name of Joan Walker, apparently she lost to Tom Banish. So clearly a personal agenda. And even in her post, she talks about having arguments with Eileen Banish online. So Joan Walker has a problem with this. It's a nothing joke, but clearly as chair of the Democrats, she said there's a chance to go after somebody here. Now, she could have posted this on her personal Facebook page, but she didn't. And she went to the Madison Democrats Facebook page, and basically knew she was going to rile people up by posting this. There is nothing, I'm going to reiterate this, to get upset about this joke is nonsense. And on this podcast, I very publicly talked about past instances where people have threatened the livelihood of a legislator over their vote. They've suggested at times maybe violent things, that people should not go to their business, things of that nature. Those are ridiculous. They should be condemned. They should be certainly come with all the full punishment that we can give somebody for making those types of accusations. Nobody should have their livelihood threatened because of a political stance, a nonsense joke, any of that crap. In this case, we clearly have a personal vendetta going on. There's something between Joan Walker and Eileen Banish. Two, this person then uses her political party status to rile up that base. I've maintained for many, many years, political parties are cults. I'm not talking about Democrats and Republicans. I'm talking about DTCs and RTCs. When you join a DTC, when you join an RTC, you say, my job is to elect Democrats or Republicans before knowing who those candidates may be, without knowing if they're good or bad, without knowing if they're qualified. Anybody who says to me, I'm blindly voting for a Democrat, no matter who it is, or Republican, no matter who it is, I don't care. You're not relevant, not part of the conversation. There's nothing to converse about. So she goes to her cult members and says, oh my God, this is awful and this is terrible. And can you believe that this happened? And the cult goes crazy. Now, this could have happened on the Republican side too. So I'm not saying it's just Democrats, but the cult goes crazy. This is inappropriate. This is awful. Should she be fired? It's disgusting, blah, 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 blah. All this nonsense. So this goes on for, I guess, a couple days. It seemed to have slowed down. I don't think the Democrats wanted it to slow down. So today I get an email, and this email, I'm going to read this to you. An open letter to the Madison Chamber of Commerce from constituents of Christine Cohen's district. So it's the 12th district, but to mention her name is significant. Now I want to be clear here. I have no evidence whatsoever that Christine has anything to do with this. In fact, I don't think she knew about this when it first happened. Obviously, I'm sure she knew that afterwards. We had a podcast on it. But in no way, shape, or form am I insinuating Christine's behind any of this or has a part in this. These are certainly people she knows. Recently, Eileen Banish, executive director, blah, 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 stated these awful things. Why would anyone think it's okay to joke about using a symbol of another person, in this case, also a symbol of Jewish culture, for target practice? So now these Democrats are saying it's anti-Semitic, which in today's climate, to allege racism is basically suicide, right? You just can't do it. They're using all this crap, all this nonsense. Banish's lack of judgment, her apparent disregard for the shadow of anti-Semitism and gun violence that hangs over her casual remarks is shocking. Just shocking. Shoot a bagel was so shocking. If she had suggested putting Cohen's Bagels out of business, if she had suggested making less money so Cohen can't feed her family, her kids, if she had suggested any sort of physical violence against Cohen, whole other story. None of that happened. None of that happened. But this letter considers, how is the town of Madison, the chamber, wish to be represented before a public already struggling with the tragedy of bigotry and bullying, both online and in our everyday lives? Now, let's make this clear. The bullying is coming from the Democrats. The Democrats bombarded social media with negative comments on Banish over and over and over again. If you don't know what bullying is, that's bullying. Piling on, spreading it among your cult, get on there, let's trash her, let's attack her. Somebody who has served the town for many, many years. Did a lot of good. You may not like her, she's Republican, whatever. But you're the one bullying. Let's not pretend for a second. To say we should shoot a bagel as bullying is comically absurd. But the Democrats are the ones bullying. This must not be allowed to stand. We call on members of the Madison Chamber to hold Eileen Banish accountable for unethical behavior and urge you to consider calling for her immediate resignation. At the very least, she must make a public unconditional apology to Senator Cohen. She had already apologized, basically because she was forced to. I mean, this was such nonsense that the better person often just says, guys, I'm sorry, can we let this go? They had no intention of letting it go. So I get a message today from a series of Madison Chamber members who are being bombarded with emails and calls from Democrats from Madison, Guilford, and some from Branford, demanding that she be fired. Now, in seeing that, and in realizing that a couple weeks back, maybe a month ago, when those accusations that Cohen's Bagels should be boycotted because of her vote on the police bill, I not only had a long Facebook post defending her, I not only had a podcast defending her, I actually went to Cohen's Bagel that day for lunch. I had never been, but just in support, I've done that because I don't care what party you are, your livelihood should never be threatened. Democrats are doing the same thing. And I kind of waited for somebody to say something. And thankfully, the chamber came out with a statement today. And I'm going to read to you. And the chamber basically said, we find it not right, but we'll look at this as a personnel issue and review it. I very much doubt the chamber would get rid of her. I will have to read to you, and I called Christine Cohen back then. I called her today, and I'm going to read to you her statement. I know there's a bunch of comments and there's questions, and I'll answer those, and I'll read those in a second. But this is from Senator Christine Cohen about 1 o'clock today. I was disappointed to hear about the comments made by Ms. Banish. As a member business of the Madison Chamber, I know how important it is for local small businesses to have nonpartisan representation. I received an apology from her yesterday in addition to the Chamber reaching out to me. I think all parties are glad to put this behind us. We will continue to stay on as a member of the Madison Chamber, along with the many fantastic businesses in town, and join with others in appreciation of all the efforts of the Chamber to promote our companies. So there's one line there that matters most to me. It is, I think all parties are glad to put this behind us. I kind of wish this was said a little sooner, but it was a good step. But let's not pretend what happened here. This was bullying. And this was bullying that was initiated by somebody with a personal agenda against Eileen. This wasn't legitimate rage over anything. Nobody has legitimate rage over the concept of shooting a bagel. If Christine Cohen owned a gift card shop, Eileen's comment would have been, we should shoot a gift card. It had nothing to do with anti-Semitism, had nothing to do with Jewish whatever, had nothing to do with race at all. It was a stupid comment. And the truth of the matter is, I keep forgetting this woman's name. If Joan Walker hadn't made a big deal about this, nobody would have known about it. So Ms. Walker deliberately took something that wasn't a big deal, no one saw, who cares, and said, let's make this a big deal, and then let's go crazy. Let's get our cult to jump on board. If you're a Democrat that was part of this, I'm not talking about the average registered Democrat. I'm a registered Democrat. I'm the average registered, I'm a moderate Democrat. But if you're in this DTC, you have to stop and ask yourself, and RTC is true, but in this case, the DTC, do I want this to be me? Do I want to be the person that goes crazy over nothing for political gain? Do I want my kids to watch me overreacting to nonsense and then take to social media to attack someone else's job? Do you want your kids to behave that way? How is that normal? In the same way, I'll call out anybody who says you shouldn't go to a business because you don't like their politics. We're going to call out anybody who says if you try to get somebody fired because you don't like their politics or a nonsense joke that meant nothing, was in no way harmful, you're to blame. You're the problem. You're the issue. There's nothing logical about this behavior. There's nothing adult or mature about this behavior. Pouring over social media, calling everybody on the chamber, saying this person needs to be fired, calling her every name in the book, saying it's reprehensible, was shooting a bagel joke. What planet are we on? You're trying to get Trump out of office. You have a million things going on. You have COVID going on, and this is what you want to spend time on? And if you're an average Democrat, it didn't dawn on you that Joan Walker may have had another agenda? May have had a personal gripe with the Banishes? She lost an election a couple years back to them. It didn't dawn on you were being used? Then the Madison ones say, oh, well, I don't know if it's working here. Let's get Guilford involved. Let's get some Branford people involved. Remember, these political parties are a fraction, like 100 people in each town. Branford's 28,000 people. Guilford's 22, 23,000 people. There's a couple hundred people make up the loudest voice of political people on social media. And this is now what they're known for. And make no mistake, this is bullying. That's what it is. That nonstop attack and get all your friends, all your like-minded cult members to jump in and attack as well. I know what a cult is. I was raised a Jehovah's Witness. I know very well what a cult is. And I left because of shit like this. Because I didn't believe that I should blindly follow whatever some leader told me to follow. And I left everyone I know and my entire family because I didn't want to be a part of that. If you're in the DTC or an RTC and you're expected to respond this way to a ridiculous, idiotic post trying to incite nonsense by Joan Walker, you have to start asking yourself why. You could still be a Democrat, still be a Republican. I'm still liberal. But to see that ridiculous post someone with an agenda trying to get you riled up, and for you to say, yeah, I'll jump in, you're the problem. I commend Christine Cohen for stepping up, for saying this is done. Let's move on. There's a special place in my heart for politicians who stand up to their own party. It shows guts. Lonnie Reed did that in Branford when she voted against a very tight budget bill. It showed guts. The John McCain moment where he refused to let a member disparage Barack Obama. It showed guts. So Christine Cohen, she probably could have done a little earlier, but it was nice to come out and say that. But this is what's wrong with the country. All these serious issues to talk about. All these legitimate problems to go over. And this is the crap we found ourselves in. Because of groupthink. Because of cults. What shouldn't be happening is Joan Walker should not be the head of your Democratic Town Committee. Someone with a clear personal agenda should not be the head of your party. And you certainly should not give that person the right to post on social media. We have reached full crazy on social media. I said this before, as someone who has posted 1 million press releases from every different political party, these parties spend, days poring over the wording in a press release. What does it say? What is it? Can we correct this? Is it the punctuation? Is the message right? Is it the tone right? Without realizing that quick post on social media is a press release. Same thing. Falls in the same category. You're just telling one person, here, you can represent us all. Go start a war. And people blindly follow that crap. That has to stop. Joan Walker should be apologizing to Eileen Banish. Because she didn't deserve that. That's called a disproportional response. A joke about shooting a bagel. And she had to deal with that crap. And chamber members saying, I'm getting calls like crazy, emails like crazy. Is there anything logical about that? How slow must your life be that you had time to call chamber members calling for somebody else's job? How bored, how lonely do you have to be that you had that kind of time on your hands? You think that's important? Go get Trump out of office. Do what you're supposed to do. Instead of starting wars and following Joan Walker, I keep forgetting her name, Joan Walker into this pit of bullshit. And I thank Christine Cohen for finally saying this is behind us. Because everybody's done with it. It's bullying. And there isn't an 8-year-old that wouldn't see this and call it bullying. Because they can see it more than you can. And that's sad. I'm going to take a look at some of the comments here. It's such a messed up issue. I've never seen anything like it. I'm seeing the emails come in. And there were some logical emails that came in after. Some on the Democratic side said, I think it's an issue, but her job shouldn't be on the line. If somebody said, you know what, this is kind of, not appropriate, or maybe this is wrong, fine, that's okay. But to start the war that Joan Walker started, and all she did was she knew she can post this and that there would be crazies on the left and her DTCs that would say, I'll jump on board, I'll attack. Unreasonably, disproportionately, but I'll do it. She knew she can do that. And that's the sad part of the way these parties are run right now. I'll also say this. In the last time we talked about this, I talked about how the political parties in Guilford and in Madison and Branford seem to be crazier, especially the Democrats, crazier than Guilford. Guilford Republicans are a little bit off. And the Guilford Democrats are incredibly reasonable, logical people, as far as I'm concerned, with what I see social media-wise. I'm wondering if the difference between Madison and Branford, who elect their first selectman every 2 years, and Guilford's every 4 years makes a difference. I think Guilford, they seem to be less at each other's throats, possibly knowing that those municipal elections are every 4 years. You don't have to go at each other so often. You're not always in election mode and campaign mode. I'm wondering if that's not one of the differences. And I think that's something we should talk about. All right, tough to see you through the windows. It's too dark, so I'll have to add some sort of light. I apologize for that. I'll do that for tomorrow. Very dark screen today. Somebody's here. Pull down the Venetian blind. I'm not going to do that. maybe a silly question. Why is the Sound newspaper now thrown in our boxes? Okay, I'm not the Sound. As I walk around town, they are strewn over lawns. I don't know who reads the Sound, but I don't know. I have no idea what the Sound is. I don't know what their business plan is. Listen, media in general is really, really struggling. So maybe they hired somebody to throw the paper like the old days, as opposed to in the mail, maybe cheaper. But media is struggling. This is why we have sponsorships and why we take donations, because it's really, really hard. I just have done a lot less writing recently because the podcast seems to be where all the reaction is. People want to. Part of the reason I do this live is that you can ask questions live. We can have a conversation live. There's issues of bias or allegations, or whatever. We're here. I'm in front of you. I can answer these questions. Article, you can't always do that as much. I don't know who's reading print anymore. Certain age groups maybe, but I know everybody's struggling. Fred replying to Margaret is cheaper than third-class mail. That may be the case. John Nelson, I don't know, just says thumbs up, so that's good. And the key word you use is reasonable people. This is nothing. This is a political witch hunt, nothing more. Alina is one of the hardest working people I know. If this was not election year, this would not be going on. Yeah, I don't know. I think it has less to do with an election year, more to do with a personal vendetta. But listen, we have to start a movement of reasonable. Maybe this election has to be over to get there, but the vast majority of people in this country are in that middle group, right? There's 10, 15% far right, 15, 20% far left. And in the middle is the rest of us. And we're pretty much the silent majority. We're not ones that jump on social media. We're not ones that go crazy. We don't overreact to nonsense. What social media has allowed to happen is a very small group of people can have a very loud voice. It's amplified. You could be a group of 100 people and be the most dominant political voice in town. Why? Because you have social media. And if you're good at social media, you can get that voice out there. And the moderates now generally stay silent because they're afraid. Nobody wants to share their opinion anymore because there's repercussions for that. If you defend Trump, you're automatically thrown into this category of being a Trumper, and you're far right. I've defended Trump. I'm not far right. If you say something about Trump is wrong, you're automatically thrown, you're a snowflake, and you're a far left nut job. Because this small group of people control the entire narrative, and they're so quick to label everybody. In this age of let's get rid of racism, it's amazing how quick we are to label everybody. You're left, you're right. You can't have a conversation anymore. And that middle group needs a voice. They need to be outspoken. Let reasonable and logic and intelligence reign. I'm not talking about education intelligence. I'm talking about emotional intelligence. The ability to look at a situation and realize that's not really a big deal. But we've lost that. It seems to be gone. Steve Sullivan can't win on issues, so they try to divide people. Everybody tries to divide people. I think Trump tries to divide people too. It's the Adam. We'll talk about the Adam election. The state senate election 2 years ago was ugly. There's no question about that. I've called it the ugliest campaign I've ever seen. But we try to judge things individually. And when Christine Cohen was attacked on that police bill, no matter how you felt about a police bill, the attack was not proportional. You cannot say to somebody, listen, I want to take your livelihood away because of a political difference. It doesn't make sense. Because of a political joke, it doesn't make sense. Fred replying to Margaret, did any Dems in Madison agree with you privately? I have many emails from Democrats in Madison. Yes, and many agreed with me. I think in general, the people that are willing to be members of Democratic town committees and Republican town committees do so for a couple reasons. One, they're so ideologically locked in something, it is just gone. Two, social reasons. There's a lot of people, you go to a DTC meeting or an RTC meeting, more DTC I would say, a lot of people, that's their night out. Their social life is going to this thing. I walked into the DTC meeting in Brantford, and I just kind of shook my head when this happened. This was the night that they had nobody to run against Jamie Cosgrove. And if you're not from Brantford, it's probably not worth running against Jamie Cosgrove. He's a lifelong Democrat, ran as a Republican. Logical, the town is in phenomenal shape. So they didn't have anybody to run, and there were some Democrats that walked in and said to the chair, so who are we supporting tonight? And my jaw hit the ground. They walked into the meeting and said, who are we supporting? Because when you join a political party, the DTC or the RTC, it is considered your job to simply blindly follow whoever they put up. I'm offended by that. Why does anybody agree to be a robot? Why does anybody agree to give up their right to think for themselves? That's crazy. And in the charter for every party, that if you're a member of the DTC, a member of the RTC, it will tell you your job is to work to get our nominated candidates elected. No, I'm not doing that. What if the candidate sucks? I'm not doing it. And you're agreeing to do that before you know who the candidates are. There's something seriously wrong with the party system. It doesn't make sense. And then you have people like Joan Walker who suddenly are now speaking for the entire Democratic Party. And everybody really knows she has a personal agenda here. It's crazy. So why we bring this up, one, it's a town that we're covering and we're dealing with. But two is because this is becoming a microcosm for the country. We're letting small groups of people who have suspect motives decide the narratives, decide the discussions, and then there's groups of people in those cults, in those core party members that will follow and say anything and do anything. And we see this. We see Obama make a message on immigration and the need to have more people kicked out of the country than ever before. And then Trump gets in and talks about immigration issues and he's racist. Well, it's not that different. We hate fracking. Fracking's terrible. Obama came in and allowed fracking. It made us energy independent. One of the reasons I'm a fan of Obama is that he fought his own country because the biggest issue we had facing us was our need to be energy independent. It's not an issue now. Why? Because Obama stood up to his own party, allowing fracking, allowing us to get ahead. We now export more energy than we import. We need people who are thinking about an issue as opposed to blindly picking a team. Because as I've said with the political aspects before, we are rooting for laundry. I'm a Knicks fan. Knicks suck. But every year, the players in the uniform change, but I'm still a Knicks fan. Am I rooting for a team? I'm rooting for laundry. I'm rooting for a logo on a back. Now, there's no harm in sports. But when you're rooting for laundry, when you're rooting for a blind logo, Democrat or Republican, whatever that name on their shirt, doesn't matter what their qualifications are, doesn't matter their morality, doesn't matter what they stand for, you're just rooting for laundry. It's a sports team to you. You're not helping the country. And you're part of the problem. Okay, we'll be back tomorrow at 4 o'clock. I don't know what the topics are. If there are questions or issues people would like me to discuss, I'd be glad to hear those. Send an email in. I like hearing from you guys. We'll see you tomorrow at 4 o'clock. I hope you all have a great evening.